Hi, welcome back to my channel and part 2 of my Michael Powell retrospective. And today we're going to be talking about the two Conrad Veidt spy films, The Spy in Black and Contraband. Now, this sees Michael Powell go back into the studio after making The Independent, The Edge of the World. He's being produced by Alexander Korda, and he makes this film. On the eve of war, actually, when they made this movie, they didn't know they were going to be at war with Germany. So it's quite interesting to see this film because it's about this German U-boat commander in the First World War who is recruited to go on this secret mission in the Orkney Islands to blow up the British fleet. And to do this, he has to work alongside this beautiful female spy who's been placed on the island, played by Valerie Hobson. This is a very important film in Michael Powell's career because it saw him teamed up for the first time with Emmerich Pressburger. This was before they made their own company called The Archers. But this was their first ever collaboration. And you really see it. Pressburger's brilliant intelligence, his dry wit, it just fuses so well with Michael Powell's direction. And it's also an interesting film because it brings in Marius Goring, who would go on to become one of Powell's most favourite actors. It also brings in Valerie Hobson. Beautiful, beautiful Valerie Hobson, one of the great beauties of the 1940s, certainly in British cinema, who had a very sad, tragic life because, of course, she was one of these great actresses, wonderful actress, fantastic charisma and sexuality about her. But she gave it all away to marry John Profumo, of course, the politician at the centre of the Profumo scandal, which was a huge sex scandal, one of the first great big sex scandals in British history in the early 1960s. Her husband had an affair with a prostitute called Christine Keeler, who was kind of an icon of British popular culture, the one where she's sitting naked on that chair, and she was also at the time having sex with a Russian spy. And poor old Valerie Hobson was the wife, the supportive wife, after having this fantastic career as an actress in the 40s. She's the first of what you might call the Michael Powell heroines, a strong, independent, quite starchy, woman who's got a sort of line in brittle upper middle class humour and wit. And she's always sort of linked with nature. Often Powell links his heroines with dogs, which are often his own dogs, as they are in this movie, and in Contraband. But the main actor is Conrad Veidt. Conrad Veidt was a major German actor. He started in his youth, he was the somnambulist, the man who's possessed in the cabinet of Dr. Caligari, often regarded as the first ever horror film. And he'd had a line in major parts in German cinema, but he fled the Nazis. And he came to Britain to make these two films. And then later, of course, he's more famous as the German officer in Casablanca. And he died soon after that in a tragic accident, actually. But what you see here is how good Veidt was. What a brilliant leading man he was. He's such a fantastic, glowering presence, so dominating. But he's witty, he's charming, he's suave. He's almost like a German Cary Grant, a bit heavier, but you know what I mean. And he's terrific in this movie. And he and Valerie Hobson have an immediate chemistry, which carries through into the second film, Contraband. The poetry of Powell's direction and Pressburger's script writing starts to combine. There's a wonderful sequence when they first meet, Conrad Veidt and Valerie Hobson. They meet under moonlight outside this Scottish croft house, and they have to recognise each other through this password, which is a line from a German poem about I think they're called the Lorelei, these women who lure sailors to their doom on remote islands. A beautiful, beautiful little piece of poetry in the film. And it builds into a really interesting adventure where eventually it all becomes this action sequence on the water, and Conrad Veidt goes down, sort of fighting, if you like, on the ship. So it's a really excellent adventure and highly recommended. The second film we're talking about today, Contraband, I could only find on a really poor print. It's not available on DVD or Blu-ray in the UK. And it's such a shame that this film is not available in the UK because it's a brilliant piece of British filmmaking. It's such fun. It sees Michael Powell move into more Hitchcockian territory, right? The story is about Conrad Veidt is a Danish captain whose ship is pulled in. This was now filmed during the war, So it's set in November 1939, so the phony war at the start of the Second World War is now in place. So there's an element of propaganda in this film. And there's a hilarious sequence later in the film, a very Hitchcock-style sequence, where they're having this chase sequence through a darkened pottery shed. And all the busts on the pottery shelves are those of Neville Chamberlain. And Neville Chamberlain gets lots of gunshots at his head. It's quite funny. Anyway, so he's this Danish captain, and his boat is pulled over into British waters to see if they've got any contraband on board. And he's got one night to spend on shore. But two of his passengers, his civilian passengers, steal the passes, and they go off into England, and he chases after them. And one of them is Valerie Hobson, who is playing this Danish aristocratic woman who is actually a spy, and her friend, who Conrad Veidt also begins to realise is a spy. And it's played by Esmond Knight, another popular Michael Powell actor, again appearing here for the first time. Now, this film is probably not as atmospheric and emotionally draining as the, well, not draining, but, emotionally involving as The Spy in Black. But it does see Powell growing in sophistication and ambition as a filmmaker. There's a wonderful sequence in the Contraband HQ, a travelling shot with a character starting in the doorway, and then he pulls back, goes in to see what's happening in this room, then he pulls back, goes and sees what's happening in this room, and it's a very, very ambitious shot, the most ambitious shot you've yet seen in Michael Powell. The sequences in London with the blackout are brilliantly done and show, how Powell uses lighting and suspense to sort of great effect and sort of oddly surreal effect. And of course, this is also the first Powell film where you have a dream sequence. It's not a particularly great one, but it's there. The film goes into more Hitchcockian territory later on, and I think it loses its edge a little bit as a Michael Powell feature. Now, the other thing I want to say about Contraband, it's known as Blackout in the US, by the way, is it apes Hitchcock quite a lot. And it reminded me, this film, but particularly The Spy in Black, actually going back to The Spy in Black, it reminded me of a Hitchcock film called The Secret Agent, which had been made about 3 years earlier, starring John Gielgud. And in this film, it's based on Ashendon by Somerset Maugham. And it's about an English spy during the First World War and his female accomplice, who both grow disenchanted with being secret agents because of the nature of having to kill people and the sort of slightly scurrilous nature of their profession. And this comes through in The Spy in Black quite powerfully. And I actually think the treatment of it is better, right? It's more adult, I think. And also it doesn't impact on the enjoyment and the movement of the action of the movie. It's rather awkward in the Hitchcock film. In this film, in The Spy in Black, there's a rather awkward monologue that Valerie Hobson has to deliver. But apart from that, it's very smooth and it's integrated into the action very well. And you really have a sympathy for the characters. And that Hitchcockianness comes through more powerfully in the second film, Contraband, where it even apes Hitchcock's slight kinkiness. So they have a scene where Conrad Veidt threatens to put Valerie Hobson in irons, and later on they're tied up together, and there's lots of movement of them struggling in the ropes, and he has to hurt her in order to get out of the ropes, etc. So there's all that going on. I wanted to say something else about this film, and let me look at my notes here. Contraband is also unusual in that it was cut in the US. A whole sequence was removed, which is completely gratuitous. Powell didn't need this sequence in the movie at all. He just wanted to indulge himself. It's a sequence set in a nightclub called The White Negro. And it's a musical sequence where these black guys are dancing with white women, and it was cut in the US because they thought it might offend southern US audiences. It's incredible. But there it is. And they also cut a brilliant dialogue sequence between Conrad Veidt and Valerie Hobson, which is crucial to understanding the film's themes. And actually, still to this day on IMDb, if you look at Contraband, it will tell you it's 1 hour and 20 minutes. It's not, it's 1 hour and 28 with the footage included. And what else did I want to say about this film? Something very important. It also reminded me a lot, Contraband. It's got that Hitchcockian sense, but it also has a very boisterous, very English humour. At the end, some upper-class twits balancing bottles of beer on their head. And it reminded me of a film made after the war called Noose, by a French director called Edmund T. Greville, which is not a great film, but it's got the similar kind of humour. It's got a similar kind of enjoyment of just style for style's sake. As you know, Powell is indulging himself in the later Hitchcock sequences, which also, in the surveillance system that is used, reminds you of Fritz Lang and the Dr. Mabuse films. And what else did I want to say? I enjoyed these films so much. The other thing that I wanted to say quickly before we leave these films is these two films start a trend in Powell's films and Emmerich Pressburger's films, which is going to become very important during the war. And that is that the heroes are not British. The hero of The Spy in Black is a German spy, and we come to sympathise with him and see it from his point of view. With Contraband, the hero is a Danish sea captain. And this will continue. You know, we'll see this. You know, in the propaganda films later on, we will see, you know, Anton Walbrook as a sympathetic figure, a German actor. So it's an interesting thing that comes into the film at this, comes into Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger's films at this stage. But these two films are kind of like a dry run for the Archers productions to come. But they're a lot of fun. If you can get hold of Contraband in a good version, it's well worth it. It's a great little movie, somewhat forgotten. The Spy in Black is available on DVD, and it's great fun. Thanks very much.